Good morning, my social studies friends. Now, today I want to talk to you a little bit about something that came up yesterday when we were talking about bias, perspective, corroboration. All right, so I'm using the SHEG resources, also known as the Inquire Group resources, like the Make Your Case and the Lunchroom Fight. So that's like the beginning stuff. And those conversations went really well. Okay, like I was really surprised. I'm constantly surprised every year when I do these lessons, the vocabulary that's starting to pop up more and more and more. Like I don't even have to prompt them to say bias, right? So that's kind of a good thing. That means it's on top of their mind, right? So I feel like now getting them to understand that news media, teachers even, politicians, parents, just anybody is first of all prone to bias, but also communicate in a way to persuade. Okay, so like as critical thinkers, I think it's really important today to try to establish how to think, obviously critically. Like that's a buzzword, so I'm trying to avoid using that, right? But like being able to take a piece of information and realize, like, hey, this person is trying to persuade me of something, right? Or this person is trying to convince me to agree with them, right? Which is also persuasion. This person is trying to get me to be on their side, right? So all those things. And I think as a whole, like us social studies teachers, we are at the forefront of an opportunity to make sure that that happens, right? To make sure that there are always two perspectives, to make sure, especially like in history, yet we don't want to necessarily judge people in the past based on our understanding of what life should be like, okay? We should go at it from a historical perspective, learn from it, certainly agree that certain things are wrong. I'm not saying that we should just forgive, things or that was right back then. That's not what I'm saying, okay? It's not what I'm saying. We need to recognize that it was wrong, so it never happens again. Like genocide, recognize that it happened. What led up to the genocide? Why were certain people being targeted? What were the motives behind the government that was targeting those people? Things like that, right? Like we need to use words like motive, right? We need to use words like persuasion. We need to use those kinds of words to clue in students, and they should hear it so much that it becomes repetitious and becomes part of their social studies psyche, so that again, when they're faced with it, they start thinking that way, okay? So like I said, it goes back to that word bias. My students are using the word bias. I'm like, that's cool. I'm really impressed that you used that word. And then of course you check to make sure that they understand what the word truly means, right? So I work in an inner city school, and racism often gets thrown around. Luckily, there are many people of color on the staff at my school. So I'm very fortunate. If nothing else, I can say, hey, let's not use that word, how you're using it, because that waters it down. You're using it inappropriately, right? Now, if you want to have a further discussion, you don't want to discuss it with me after class, then here, you should go see so-and-so. You should go see so-and-so. You should go see so-and-so. And this has been cleared by those teachers. I'm not just like pushing it on them, but these are conversations that we have all the time as staff together. Like, this is a problem, student. And these are the teachers who are people of color are the ones who are bringing this up, So it's like we have to be comfortable talking about these things, especially as social studies teachers. One thing that I do at the beginning of the year, that I did it a couple days ago, is I'm very upfront. I'm like, if I'm teaching world history class, for example, I said, humanity kind of sucks as a whole. There's not a society, a country in this world that has their hands clean from murder and slavery and genocides and horrible situations and horrible acts. Okay, there's not a single society, not a single place in this planet, okay, that has their hands clean of that. It's like, because humanity kind of sucks. People don't learn from the mistakes. people don't learn what leads up to those situations, and they ignore it or whatever, and that just keeps repeating itself. Okay, classic history teacher stuff, right? But I also talk about race directly and bluntly, and I do it, and I try to do it as respectfully as I possibly can, especially as me being a middle-aged white man, with a I am the minority in my class. Okay, let's put it that way. I am the minority. So I talk to my students like, hey, we have to be able to talk about race. And I deliberately discuss melanin, for example. I was like, and some of you might be disagreeing with me. I'm probably going to get a little bit of hate on this one. And I'm okay with that, because it opens up the doors for discussion, and I'm more than welcome to hear your perspectives on it. But say, race is a social construct. First of all, I ask them how many races there are in the world, right? So I say race is a social construct, right? We're all bleed red, right? Genetically, the makeup of us genetically are all the same. The only thing that really separates us are some genetic mutations. That doesn't mean we're a separate race, right? We talk about melanin especially, because I'm the whitest guy in the room, right? I was like, well, why did my ancestors not have so much melanin? Based off of the current scientific and historic research and knowledge, this is what we know. It could change. I always tell them that, because nothing's infinite, right? It's like, there could be new evidence, but right now, like, what we know is everybody pretty much originated in Africa. And then my people, moved up to the northern part of Europe, and I go into all of that. And then I engage them after this discussion. Say, okay, so now how many of you are comfortable with discussing race? And I have them to give me the thumbs up, medium, or thumbs down. I always tell them to be honest, right? Like, I need you to be honest with me. And if anything I say is making you uncomfortable, you can talk to me. If you don't feel comfortable talking to me, you can talk to another teacher. You can talk to my principal. You can talk to my vice principal. My vice principal is a person of color, right? So I opened the door. I said, no, don't be in my classroom uncomfortable. This has to be a comfortable space, right? It has to be a safe space. You have to be able to feel like you can learn here and voice your concerns and thoughts without any retribution, okay? As long as it's respectful, we need to have these conversations. And I tell them, because if we can't have these conversations, if we can't have them bluntly and directly, then nothing's going to change, right? We have to be able to approach each other non-confrontationally and have conversations so things can change. Communication is a foundation element of social studies, right? It goes back to the whole thing at the very beginning, talking about key words like bias, right? Persuasion. And this year's an election year. I kind of wish I was teaching government again, government high school, because man, some great conversations are going to happen this year. Good, bad, awkward, whatever. But, preparing our young people to succeed in a world that is very different from the world that I grew up in, right? Like, as teachers, we're middle-aged or older, right? These kids are growing up in a world that's so different from the world that we grew up in. And we have to give them the tools to do that. Before we can teach them the history, the facts, we have to front load the conversation, okay? We can't just jump into history. I feel like you just can't jump into it. We have to ease into it, make sure that they understand the skills that we want them to use, the words that we want them to use. And I don't like doing that necessarily either. I feel like, man, I just want to get into the history part. I'm biting at the bit. I get that. But front loading the vocabulary, the expectations, historical understanding, especially every year, kids mature, so you can go a little bit deeper with that historical understanding, with those historic skills that they're building up on it. It makes the rest of the year so much better, right? It really, really does. Because we're using the same terms. We can talk about race, genocide, women equality or inequality, right? We can talk about all those things openly, comfortably, right? And in a way that promotes learning. We have to be open to learn. As teachers also have to be open to learn. I've had students in the past that have said some things, and it's really got me thinking. It really got me thinking. And then I'd come around and I might thank that student, or I might ask them a follow-up question. So having those interactions are always a positive thing. I love it. It's one of the reasons why I got into teaching, is to get those light bulb moments, right? It's not just to teach them stuff to regurgitate, but as a social studies teacher, we're teaching them things to survive and one day run our country, run our world, so that when we're decrepit, we're not living in a dystopian society. All right. So yeah, I hope that gives you something to think about. And if you have some comments or maybe best practices or methods that you use to open those doors to some deeper conversations in social studies, then leave them below. I'd love to hear it. And I will delete any comment that is negative. Okay, I'm telling you now, this is my world. You're just a guest on it. But I want open conversation, as long as it's in a good, positive way. Let me know. Can't wait to see what you had to say. Thank you so much. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Give a kiss and hug to your loved ones, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care.